Here's something no one talks about, but every woman who's experienced it knows it's real. You've been there, mind that moment, right after intimacy, when everything shifts. Most relationship advice tells you to cuddle, to talk, to connect emotionally. But Carl Jung discovered something profound about the male psyche that changes everything we think we know about what happens in those vulnerable moments after physical connection. You know that feeling when a man seems different afterward, when something deeper awakens in him that you can't quite name, when he looks at you like he's seeing something he's never seen before. You're not imagining this. There's a psychological reason why certain women become absolutely unforgettable to men in these moments, while others become just another experience. The truth is, what you do in the first few minutes after intimacy doesn't just affect that moment, it rewires how his unconscious mind sees you forever. And Jung's research into the masculine psyche reveals exactly why. By the end of this video, you'll understand the hidden psychological mechanism that either makes you forgettable or makes you the woman he can never let go of. And trust me, once you see this pattern, you'll recognize it everywhere. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how some women seem to have this mysterious power over men? How do they create this almost magnetic pull that goes way beyond physical attraction? Comment below if you've ever wondered what that secret is, because what I'm about to reveal goes deeper than anything you've heard before. Let's start with something you probably already know but have never heard anyone admit out loud. You've felt it, that moment when you realize the man you've just been intimate with is processing something profound. Maybe his breathing changes. Maybe he gets quiet in a way that feels meaningful. Maybe he looks at you differently. Most women sense this shift, but don't understand what's happening. They think he's being distant or withdrawing, so they fill the silence with conversation, with questions about feelings, with attempts to create an emotional connection through words. And here's where everything goes wrong. I used to think the same way, that intimate moments required immediate emotional processing, verbal affirmation, deep conversations about what just happened. But Jung's work on masculine psychology reveals something startling. Men don't process intimate connection the way women do. In fact, trying to force emotional conversation in these moments can actually destroy the very bond you're trying to create. You're not crazy for sensing that something deeper is happening in these moments. You're picking up on what Jung called archetypal activation, when intimate physical connection triggers ancient psychological patterns in the masculine unconscious. But here's what no one tells you. How you respond to this activation determines whether you become a passing experience or an unforgettable presence in his psyche. Jung spent decades studying the unconscious mind, and his work with couples revealed that intimate moments don't just create physical satisfaction. They activate what he called anima projection. This is when a man unconsciously projects his deepest feminine ideal onto the woman he's with. But this is crucial. This projection only solidifies under very specific psychological conditions. Everything you've been told about post-intimacy connection is backwards. Society tells you that emotional vulnerability requires verbal expression, that deep connection happens through talking about feelings, that men need to be coaxed into emotional openness through direct questioning and conversation. But Jung discovered something that completely demolishes this conventional wisdom. The masculine psyche processes profound experiences, especially intimate ones, through what he called active imagination. This is a non-verbal, symbolic, almost ritualistic mental process that happens below conscious awareness. When you immediately jump into verbal processing after intimacy, you're actually interrupting this ancient psychological mechanism. You're pulling him out of the unconscious state, where real bonding occurs, and forcing him into conscious, analytical thinking. It's like waking someone up during their deepest sleep cycle. It fragments the very process that creates lasting connection. Think about it. Have you ever noticed that the men who become most attached, most devoted, most unable to forget certain women, are often with women who have this quality of presence, this ability to be fully there without needing to fill every moment with words or analysis? Jung called this feminine presence, not feminine in the gender sense but feminine in the archetypal sense. It's the ability to hold space, to witness, to be rather than to do. And in those vulnerable moments after physical intimacy, this quality triggers something primal in the masculine unconscious. Most relationship advice treats men like broken women, like they need to be fixed, opened up, made more emotionally expressive. But Jung understood that masculine psychology has its own wisdom, its own way of processing deep experiences, and when you honor this instead of fighting it, something magical happens. Here's what Jung discovered about the masculine psyche that changes everything. After physical intimacy, men enter what he called the integration phase. This is when the unconscious mind processes the experience, determines its significance, and decides how much emotional investment to make. But here's the key. This integration happens through silence, through internal processing, through what Jung termed masculine introspection. The man isn't withdrawing, he's actually going deeper into connection. He's unconsciously deciding whether this woman represents just physical satisfaction or something archetypal, something that touches his soul. In these moments, his unconscious mind is asking profound questions. Does this woman see me? Does she accept all of me? Can she witness my depth without needing to change it? Does her presence make me feel more like myself, or does it make me feel like I need to perform? And here's where most women unknowingly sabotage the very connection they're seeking. By immediately asking, "What are you thinking?" or "How was that for you?" or trying to create emotional intimacy through conversation, they signal to his unconscious that they can't tolerate his natural processing style. They can't hold space for his masculine way of integrating experience. But when a woman can be present, can witness, without needing to fix or change or understand verbally, something profound happens in his psyche. Jung called this anima recognition. When a man's unconscious recognizes a woman who can hold both his strength and his vulnerability, without needing either to be different. This triggers what Jung termed the eternal feminine, not the woman herself, but the archetypal pattern she represents. And once this pattern is activated, once his unconscious recognizes this quality in her, he literally cannot forget her. She becomes woven into his psyche at the deepest level. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice. Because once you understand this pattern, you'll see it everywhere. Think about the couples where the man is completely devoted, where he seems almost mystically connected to his partner. Look closely at these women, and you'll notice something subtle but profound. They have this quality of presence that's hard to describe. They're not trying to be anything other than what they are. They don't need constant verbal affirmation or emotional processing. They can sit in silence, and it feels like communion, not emptiness. They witness without judgment, accept without trying to change, love without conditions. Jung called this feminine wisdom, the understanding that some experiences are too profound for immediate verbalization, that some connections happen in the realm of being, not doing, that masculine psychology has its own sacred rhythms that must be honored, not interrupted. Haven't you noticed that the women men can't get over, the ones they talk about years later, the ones who haunt their dreams, often have this quality? They're not necessarily the most conventionally beautiful or the most accomplished, but they have this ability to create what Jung called sacred space, moments where a man feels deeply seen and accepted for exactly who he is. Modern neuroscience actually backs this up. Research shows that after intimate connection, men's brains enter a state called post-coital reflection, where the default mode network, the area responsible for self-reflection and meaning-making, becomes highly active. This is when deep bonding occurs, when emotional investment is determined, when lasting attachment forms. But this neural process requires space, requires silence, requires what Jung called reverent witnessing. When this space is honored, when a woman can be present without needing to fill the silence with words or analysis, something magical happens. The man's unconscious begins to associate her with peace, with acceptance, with a kind of love that doesn't demand or require or need. Think about the most powerful feminine figures in history, in mythology, in literature. What quality do they all share? Presence. the ability to be fully there without needing anything to be different, the capacity to hold space for masculine depth without needing to understand it intellectually or process it verbally. Here's the secret that changes everything. What you do after intimacy isn't about technique or strategy, it's about archetypal recognition. You're either embodying the eternal feminine that Jung wrote about, or you're unconsciously pushing against masculine psychology in ways that create distance instead of connection. The women men never let go of understand something profound. Masculine devotion isn't created through emotional demands or verbal processing. It's created through what Jung called sacred witnessing. The ability to see and accept a man's depth without needing to change it, fix it, or even understand it completely. In those moments after intimacy, when his unconscious is most open, most vulnerable, most receptive to archetypal imprinting, what he needs isn't conversation. What he needs is presence, the experience of being completely accepted, completely witnessed, completely honored for exactly who he is in that moment. This triggers what Jung called anima integration, when a man's unconscious feminine aspects, his capacity for depth and feeling and soulful connection, feels safe to emerge because it's being honored rather than analyzed. When this happens, when he feels this level of acceptance, something irreversible occurs in his psyche. He begins to associate you with a quality of love he may have never experienced before. Unconditional presence, not love that needs him to be more emotional, more expressive, more verbally intimate, but love that witnesses his masculine nature and finds it sacred exactly as it is. Jung's research showed that men who experienced this kind of acceptance from women developed what he called soul recognition, a deep unconscious knowing that this person sees and honors their essential nature. And once this recognition occurs, once it's imprinted in the psyche, it creates an emotional bond that transcends ordinary attachment. This is why certain women become unforgettable, not because they're perfect, or because they never challenge, or because they're always agreeable, but because they understand something profound about masculine psychology, that men fall in love with women who can witness their depth without needing to change it. Let me share something personal that illustrates this principle. I once knew a woman who had this almost mysterious effect on men. She wasn't conventionally the most beautiful woman in the room, wasn't the most accomplished or the most outgoing, but men became absolutely captivated by her. I watched her interact with a man she was dating, specifically in those intimate moments afterward, and what I noticed was profound. She didn't fill the silence with questions or conversation. She didn't need reassurance or verbal affirmation. She simply was present, accepting, witnessing. She created this space where he could just exist without needing to perform or explain or process. And you could see it in his eyes, this look of almost disbelief, like he'd found something he didn't even know he was looking for. Jung would have called this anima projection, when a man's unconscious recognizes the archetypal feminine in a woman's presence. But here's what made it even more powerful. This wasn't about her being passive or submissive. She had opinions, boundaries, her own strong personality, but she understood something profound about timing, about when to engage intellectually and when to simply witness. She honored the sacred rhythm of masculine processing, and this principle applies beyond romantic relationships. Think about the women who have profound influence in their careers, their families, their communities. Often they share this quality, the ability to be present without agenda, to witness without judgment, to create space for others to be authentically themselves. This changed how I understood feminine power entirely. It's not about being more, or doing more, or achieving more. It's about embodying a quality of presence that allows others, especially men, to feel deeply seen and accepted for who they actually are, not who they think they should be. So what does this actually look like in practice? How do you embody this quality of presence that Jung identified as so powerful? It's simpler than you might think, but it requires understanding masculine psychology at a deeper level. First, understand that in those moments after intimacy, silence isn't emptiness, it's sacred space. Instead of feeling the need to fill it with conversation, breathe into it. Let yourself simply be present with whatever is arising. This doesn't mean being passive or disconnected. It means being deeply, consciously present. Notice his breathing, match his rhythm naturally, not as a technique, but as a way of honoring the shared space you're in. Let your own nervous system settle into presence, rather than immediately moving into analysis or emotional processing. Second, practice what Jung called active receptivity. This means being fully there without agenda, not waiting for him to say something specific, not needing the experience to mean something particular, not requiring verbal confirmation that the connection was meaningful. Instead, simply witness what's present. Notice the quality of energy between you. Honor the fact that profound experiences often can't be captured in words immediately. Some of the deepest human connections happen in the realm of being, not talking. This doesn't mean never having conversations about your relationship or never expressing your needs. It means understanding timing, understanding when masculine psychology is most open to verbal connection and when it needs space for internal processing. Jung discovered that men actually become more emotionally open and expressive when they feel this kind of acceptance first. When they experience unconditional presence, when they feel witnessed without judgment, their natural emotional depth emerges organically. Practice this presence in other areas of your life too, with friends, family, and colleagues. Notice how differently people respond when you're truly present with them versus when you're trying to fix, change, or understand them. This quality of witnessing creates profound safety that allows authentic connection to emerge. Imagine embodying this quality of presence so naturally that you become the woman men can't forget. Not because you're trying to be unforgettable, but because you've learned to witness masculine depth with such reverence that it awakens something sacred in their psyche. You're not the woman who needs constant verbal reassurance or emotional processing. You're the woman who can create sacred space, who can witness without agenda, who can love without conditions. You understand that some of the most profound connections happen in silence, in presence, in simply being. Picture how this changes your relationships. Men feel safe to be vulnerable with you because they know you won't immediately need to analyze or process their vulnerability. They feel seen because you're witnessing their essential nature, not trying to change it into something more emotionally expressive. And here's the beautiful paradox: when you stop needing men to process intimacy the way you do, when you honor their natural rhythm of integration, they actually become more open, more emotionally available, more deeply connected to you than you ever thought possible. You become what Jung called a vessel for the eternal feminine. Not feminine in a traditional gender sense, but feminine in the archetypal sense. The part of existence that can hold, witness, accept, and love without conditions. This quality transforms not just your romantic relationships, but every connection in your life. People feel safer with you, more authentic, more able to be themselves. Because you've learned the profound art of presence without agenda. The beautiful thing about understanding this psychological principle is that you can begin practicing it immediately. Tonight, this week, in your current relationships and future connections. It's not about becoming someone different. It's about embodying a quality of presence that you already possess. Start with yourself. Practice being present with your own experiences without immediately needing to analyze or understand them. Notice what it feels like to simply witness your own emotions, your own responses, your own inner landscape without judgment. In your interactions with men, whether romantic or otherwise, begin to notice when you feel the urge to fill silence with conversation or to process experiences verbally immediately. Not to suppress this urge, but to understand it, and sometimes choose presence instead. Pay attention to how differently men respond when you create this kind of space for them. Notice how their own emotional depth emerges naturally when they feel witnessed rather than analyzed. Watch how connection deepens when it's not forced or demanded, and share your experiences. Comment below about times when you felt this quality of presence from others, or when you've embodied it yourself. What did you notice? How did it feel different from ordinary interaction? Remember, this isn't about becoming passive or losing your voice. It's about understanding timing, understanding when to engage intellectually and when to simply witness. It's about honoring both masculine and feminine ways of processing deep experiences. If this resonates with you, if you recognize this pattern in your own life or relationships, you're not alone. There's a whole community of women learning to embody this quality of presence, learning to honor both their own needs and masculine psychology in ways that create deeper connection for everyone. What Jung discovered about masculine psychology and intimate connection reveals something profound about human bonding itself. The women men never let go of aren't necessarily the most beautiful or accomplished. They're the women who can create sacred space, who can witness without an agenda, who can love without conditions. You've probably met women like this in your own life. Women who have this almost mysterious quality of presence that makes everyone around them feel more authentic, more accepted, more able to be themselves. Now you understand the psychology behind this power. This quality isn't reserved for a special few. It's an archetypal capacity that exists within every woman. It's the ability to embody what Jung called the eternal feminine, the aspect of existence that can hold, witness, and accept without needing to change or fix or understand everything immediately. When you embody this presence, when you learn to create sacred space, especially in those vulnerable moments after intimacy, you don't just become unforgettable to men, you become a catalyst for their own emotional depth and authentic expression. If this video has opened something for you, if you recognize yourself in these patterns, or want to develop this quality of presence more fully, let me know in the comments. Share your experiences, your questions, your insights. This kind of transformation happens in a community, not in isolation. And if you want to understand more about how Jungian psychology applies to relationships, about how to embody archetypal feminine qualities that create profound attraction and connection, make sure you're subscribed because I'm going deeper into these principles in upcoming videos. The next video reveals Jung's insights about what men find absolutely irresistible in women, and it's not what you think. It's not about appearance or achievement, but about embodying a quality of being that awakens something ancient in masculine psychology. Until then, practice presence, practice witnessing, practice creating sacred space in your relationships, and notice how everything begins to shift. Because when you understand the psychology of deep human connection, you don't just change your relationships, you change your entire experience of being alive. Hit subscribe if this resonated with you, and I'll see you in the next video, where we dive even deeper into the hidden psychology of attraction and connection.